Hey brothers and sisters, this is JB from within Punk Zine. I'm sitting here with the one and only Russ Rankin. How's it going, man?
Good, good.
Right on. So you're on a little bit of a two-show thing going on. You just came back from Music for Cancer. How was that experience?
It was great. We always have a great time in Quebec. Fans were awesome. We got to reconnect with a lot of old friends. Our bass player married a girl from Montreal, so she came back with their kids, and we're visiting in-laws, and we had a whole bunch of Chuck's family at the show, which was cool. And we had a fun time. It was awesome.
Awesome. So you guys are doing the Piece in Our Time. So is there a certain set list that you guys are going to be playing some of the older stuff this time around? Last time you played mostly the album. So what's the set list going to be like here in Toronto?
We have a pretty career-spanning set, I think you could say. I think that pretty much all of we don't really have hits, but if we did, like, all the hits are on it, spanning all of our records back to the first one, and even a song off of our EP, Phenomenon Craving, as well as a couple songs off Piece in Our Time.
Nice. And of course, we're talking about Forgotten Country, which, that was kind of a big breakthrough and everything. So, do you find that there's a progression through the albums? Like, I find that Operation Phoenix was kind of where you guys really got that feel that came in to Piece in Our Time. So, where do you feel like it changed in the album-wise for you?
I think I know that Operation Phoenix is an album that either was the album, like, half of our fans have been waiting for us to make that album, and then half of our fans were no longer our fans after that album. It was sort of it ended up being kind of polarizing, because it was really hard and really dark and really aggressive. And at the time, it was the type of music that we were wanting to play. And I think in hindsight, of course, it's easy to pick it apart and dissect it and second guess it. I was definitely not in a good place. Like, reading the lyrics, it's pretty much of a bum out now, but it's cool. And we were touring a lot with harder bands, and we were gravitating towards that kind of music. And so that was just kind of where we were at. And what we had tried to do later on, specifically with Symptoms of a Leveling Spirit, which is one of my favorites, with Bill, our producer, is he was like, well, you guys play this hard stuff, and then you play this, like, melodic stuff, and a lot of times it sounds like two different bands. And he goes, I want to make it so it sounds linear, so it sounds like one band where every song has elements of both of these, not where it's just like, because I feel like some of our stuff is so melodic and mellow, some of it's so hard that it's hard to reconcile it as one band. Like, this is all, like, in hindsight. Obviously, we didn't, at the time it felt right, but so since Symptoms, I think that we've tried to make records with that in mind. Like, all the things that make us Good Riddance, like, let's see if we can't, like, combine them into every song, so that it doesn't sound like a band with a screaming singer and a mellow singer, but it's just like one guy. And that's sort of been what our true north a little bit, probably since Symptoms, at least for me. Like, that, I really took that to heart when Bill brought that up. He's like, because he played us some cuts off Operation Phoenix, and he played us some cuts off some other albums, and he goes, this sounds like two different bands. And he goes, and it shouldn't. You guys have the chops and the background and the cachet to, like, straddle both of these worlds, and there's probably a better way to do it than what's been happening. And I really took that to heart.
And the politicalness that came in, you guys do a lot of things, and you guys do a lot of support for animal rights, and you have Planned Parenthood and everything like that. So, how do you view the political scape that's going on right now in the world? Kind of almost brings me back to the song Waste.
It's hard. It's hard because as an American, I struggle with what's happening in our country, and with the fact that what happens in our country, for better or worse, affects the rest of the world probably more than it ought to, given our population size. Like our per capita impact on the rest of the world is exaggerated, and so when things are messed up at home, it causes a ripple effect. And so one of the things that's been interesting since we started playing again in 2012 was reflecting on how these lyrics that were written in like the mid-90s are still so relevant, and how sad that is. And I guess at some point a lot of people in bands, at least myself, naively believed that like we were funneling our efforts into some sort of counterculture that actually would have enough impetus and force to press our demands and force some kind of change. And that hasn't happened, you know. And after singing about all this stuff for so many years, and the lyrics of some of these songs could be written about how the world is right this second, and they were written in like 1994. So that's sort of sad. It's hard for me to drum up any kind of optimism anymore. We just had an election in our country, this last general election, where I was berated by the right, which I'm used to, but then I was also berated by the left because I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, and so like it's just sucked. I mean, just the whole thing just sucks. Like, at least up here, you guys have some semblance of a free press still. At least if I'm Canadian and I walk down the street election time, I'm going to see posters on every street corner for like at least 4 or 5 parties, and they're going to talk about all of those parties on the news. And so if I'm going to vote, I got a nodding acquaintance with what's out there for the most part. At home, everybody thinks there's just 2 parties, and that if you don't vote for those 2 parties, that you're, depending which side you lean, you're helping the other side win. And it's just so defeating. And it doesn't ever, like every 4 years, I'm told, hey, I know you're green and all that, but like, you got to vote for Democrat A because otherwise Republican B will get elected. We don't want that. And it happens every 4 years. There's some like Republican boogeyman that I have to block by not voting for who I want. And I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's the right way to do it. And I've gotten so much hatred from people who I would probably align with politically because of that. And it just makes me sad.
Yeah, up here we have the Green Party that actually managed to get a seat in the House of Commons this year. So last year during the
Elizabeth
elections.
May. Yeah.
So there's progression happening in our society.
Well, that's about, and you think about it, like I'm not suggesting that our entire Congress should be green. I'm suggesting that currently there's nobody in Congress who represents me.
Yeah.
So one green in Parliament in Canada is probably less than there should be, but at least there's somebody in there.
Yep.
And not, maybe parliamentary is the way to go. Maybe not. I think even with a bicameral system like we have, it could be better than it is. I think that we have to open debates. We have to take the money out of politics. We have to allow people to make informed decisions. You know, your guys' last general election was over 80% turnout. Our last election was about 37%.
Wow.
And so how do we get these other 60% of Americans engaged? Because if you look at corporate party A and corporate party B, who both want nothing but a perpetual war, who want the death penalty, who don't want single-payer health care, you can't really tell them apart anymore. And you only present those 2 options, you're going to marginalize, I think, a vast majority of Americans out of the whole process. And that's proven by the numbers at the polls. And so I think that if you present more options, if you open the debates, if you create a dialogue and some discussion, people are going to be like, hey, like I don't like that person or that person, but like this party's platform I could get behind.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like your guys' turnout election-wise and ours being so different. I don't think that that's just an accident or a coincidence.
I felt the Feel the Burn movement was really going to happen, and it was looking really positive there because he does model a lot after the socialist views. And everybody says that, it's too socialist to actually make change. So
Yeah, but he was effectively muzzled by the Democrats, who he continues to inexplicably shill for. I don't understand it.
Yeah. So coming back to the albums, you know, Pacing Our Time has been around for a while. Is there anything planned coming up? I know you did do the covers. That was pretty cool. The Kiss cover.
We're probably gonna start kicking around some new stuff here pretty soon. We're fortunate in that we don't have a, like, nobody's expecting much of us anymore, so we get to play when we have time, if the shows will seem fun, and then if time allows and we have some creativity going, we get a chance to try to play some new music. But it's not like it used to be, where we were on this kind of like grind. I don't want to say grind, because we were really fortunate to get a chance to do what we did for so long, but where we would write an album, record it, release it, tour everywhere, and then start over again.
Yeah.
And so that's not the case anymore for us. So that being said, like, we're a band and we're creative people, and we eventually get tired of playing the same songs over and over again, and there needs to be new stuff. So I would not be surprised if there was new music.
Nice. Coming into Toronto, you know, you always see when you come down that Spadina exit that there's a large tent city there. Not only from gentrification, but also it's just basically people that have a lot of addictions and everything. And I always think of bad choices. So, how do you view that? I mean, people make the choices in their lives. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. It's a downward spiral. What's your view on the positivity and change, like trying to find yourself?
As far as addiction?
Yes, as far as addictions.
Well, it's tough. I used to drink a lot when I was younger, and I was able to get sober and stay sober. And I would probably be dead or in prison if I hadn't stopped drinking, and I wouldn't have been able to do any of this. So it's tough, and I think that Canada and countries like it do more to decriminalize and try to get people back into the world than we do. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah. I mean, today is kind of unique because you guys are touring around, and you're going to be touring around with a Vulture Wake, and which Sean is also the drummer for the band. So is that guy part machine? Like that's 2 sets back to back.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to really care. Like, he seems to be able to play a lot. He seems to be able to play a lot without ever tiring out. I think that tonight he's got a band between. Last night he had a couple bands between, but there have been nights where he hasn't. And we played a festival in Texas where he filled in for Pulley, and they played right before us.
Yeah.
And so we played 2 sets right in a row, back to back, of like fast music. So he takes it seriously. He's in great shape, and he knows how to take care of his body to be able to play drums at the level that he does. So it's a testament to him and his dedication to his craft, I think.
Nice. You guys have been around for a very long time, so you guys have toured a lot with a lot of amazing bands and a lot of amazing support. So if you had a choice of the perfect tour, who would it be?
Lifetime, us, and Sick of It All.
Nice. I feel there's a resurgence in the hardcore scene. I know, to me, I listen to a lot of hardcore. I don't think it ever died out or didn't ever pass. It just kind of evolved and changed. Now a lot is coming back up, and you see a lot more of the older bands that are starting to resurface, doing reunion tours and everything like that. So where do you see the world of hardcore moving forward?
I'm always fuzzy on hardcore because I found that it means different things to different people depending on how old you are. Because a few years ago I went to a show that was billed as a hardcore show, and every band I would consider metal, but it was they thought it was hardcore, and I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. To me, hardcore is Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, bands like that, Cro-Mag. that's hardcore to me.
Nice.
That's just because I'm really old.
Yeah.
So I think it's meant different things to different people. I definitely think that. Yeah, a lot of what is presented as hardcore to me, sometimes when I hear it, to me it sounds metal, which is fine. But so I don't really know. I know there's a lot of there's always some cool music happening that's new, but not really new, but like a new spin on an old style of music. So there's a lot of that going on. Like I've got some buddies who take photos, and on Instagram I see these pictures of these bands, and I check out the music, and it sounds like I'm in a time warp, but a little bit different. Like they're not directly aping a style of music, but they're deeply inspired by something that happened a long time ago, but they're making it like fresh and different, and they're playing like in record stores and in storage spaces and these like DIY. It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome, and it's just, the pictures are great because it just reminds me of like when people were like, you know, fuck this, we're gonna put on our own shows, we're gonna do our own thing because this is the music that's important to us, and we're gonna find a way to make it happen. And I'm enjoying kind of like voyeuristically checking that out. It's pretty cool.
So talk about merch. Years and years ago, you guys had a really awesome shirt that had the Tim Hortons logo kind of thing. My shirt got ripped off, so I don't know where it went, but I've been dying to try to get one of those shirts back. But this time around, you got the nut holding the bomb.
Yeah.
So what other kind of concepts you got coming out?
Well, we'll have to see what kind of new music happens. I think that the Peace in Our Time bomb motif, and we have our bomb logo, like that's kind of always been a thing that we've used. I wanted us to have the Tim Hortons shirts again for this run, but I think I forgot to tell somebody. Like, usually our guitar player Luke is in charge of the merchandise, so I should have told him sooner. But those were very popular shirts. That was pretty cool. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see with the new music, if there's new music, what sort of stylistic things it conjures up. A lot of times that's kind of, you listen to songs, you listen to the record as a whole, and try to think about images or things like that to design merchandise off of. You know, and there's always going to be classic Good Riddance stuff, but it's also cool to have stuff I think that's themed off like a most recent release
or current event that's happening.
I don't like to do that so much, just because, I mean, I love the Dead Kennedys, one of my favorite bands, but I always feel like their music loses something because they